Yeah, it's working. Ladies and gentlemen, we are continuing. And since this room is very big and we are not having a full audience yet, I would like to ask you to come a little bit to the front so we can have nice discussions and a bit more of an intimate feeling here. And if there are any of your colleagues or friends outside whom you think you should be here, then you are allowed now to call them in. So let's start this session. We have a full session which actually builds on the session this morning on the resilience of water utilities. And the session's name is Moving Towards Climate Resilient Utilities, Lessons Learned. And the idea is that we have different presentations, and at the end we have a panel discussion. This session is organized by Waterlinks and by International Water Association and by Waterworks and by GWOPA. And from the GWOPA side, I'm representing the community of practice on water resources, resilience and climate change. And what we want to do with this session is to explore or continue exploring how water utilities can cope with climate change adaptation and how they can improve climate resilience through water operator partnerships. And we have presentations and a panel. We aim to share innovations and approaches to increase resilience and also to discuss challenges today. So, as I mentioned, we're organizing this with the International Water Association, with Waterlinks, with Waterworks, and with the GWOPA community of practice, water resources, resilience, and climate change. We wanted to use the Mentimeter, but it's a little bit late, so I would suggest that we skip this one. But let me give you our lineup for today, for this session. We start off with Waterworks presenting a presentation by Vitens, Ivar Abbas from the Netherlands, and that will be followed up by Zaitouni Rehema from the Nakuri Water Utility. She will be online because she could not manage to find a visa. And then we're going to the next block, hosted by the International Water Association. We have a presentation by Professor Dr. Engineer Norbert Jardin from the Ruhrverband, Germany. Dr. Lisa Ehrenfried, who will also be virtually online available from Australia. She's from the Yara Valley Water. And then we'll have engineer Eva Aerts and engineer Tom Sandering of the Dunea company, the Netherlands. And then we'll close with a final presentation by Mrs. Yolanda Gomez from the Philippines, from the Waterlinks network. And then we'll move into the panel. So maybe one thing that I don't want to forget to tell you is that we have a community of practice under the GWOPA community of practice umbrella, which is called the Water Resources, Resilience and Climate Change, COP. And that basically tries to bring practitioners together in the water utility sector to exchange experience on how to build resilience and how to cope with the challenges that we are facing. The COP now has over a bit more than 100 members, and what we basically do is that we organize every month or so a webinar where people present their experience, and that's followed up by a discussion. So it's very nice, and if you want to join that, it's open. You can go to the GWOPA website and ask for permission to be part of the COP network, and then you can also be a member of the COP. And that means you could go to the gwopa.org/workplace. That's the address. So thank you. This was the introduction, and I would like to quickly give the words to Ivar, a colleague from Vitens. And Ivar Abbas works with the Vitens Water Utility. He's a omgevingsmanager, a environmental manager, and I think you can maybe better explain yourself what that actually means.
Thanks a lot for the introduction. Just waiting for my presentation, otherwise I have to improvise. Yeah, there it is. All right, thank you. Welcome everyone after the coffee break. My name is Ivar. I work at Vitens, a Dutch drinking water utility. And today I'm going to tell you something about our first steps in becoming a climate resilient utility. And some of you might know me also from the COP Adriaan just mentioned, because I'm also a co-moderator there. But first, let me introduce Vitens a little bit. Oh, I need to click next slide. Vitens is the largest drinking water utility in the Netherlands. So we provide over 1/3 of the country of drinking water. And yearly we produce more than 370 million cubic meters of tap water. And for example, we also maintain and manage more than 2,600 of hectares of natural areas. And which differs from other drinking water utilities is that we use groundwater as main resource. And of course this has advantages, but also its disadvantages, I will tell you about. The biggest challenge, oh, I can see it over there. The biggest challenge at the moment in the drinking water supply in the Netherlands is the dramatic increase in the water demand. As you can see over here in this graph, so from 2015 onwards, the water demand has significantly increased. This is mainly due to climate change, but also population growth and economic growth. And in our case, because we're using groundwater as a source mainly, it means a higher demand means a higher extraction. And this can have negative impact on environment and society, because groundwater extraction or over-extraction can result in less yield for agriculture, so which means loss of income for the farmers, but it can also cause severe damage to natural areas, to nature, and it can, in a worst case scenario, it can even lead to extinction of certain species. And also, over-extraction has an impact on people, their homes, or can have an impact on people, their homes, because over-extraction can cause land subsidence, which can lead to damage to houses, crack formation in homes, etc. And actually our ambition is to mitigate this negative impact. And maybe it's more like a dream, but in the end we also like to have a positive impact in the far future. But first we're trying to mitigate our negative impact. So we do this by 3 pillars actually. So our first pillar is really trying to create awareness about the high water demand. Can we try to aim at sustainable water use by our domestic but also our corporate consumers, and also of course our own production. So can we do it with less water in our, can we look at our water losses in our production facilities? And the second part, I think that's a very interesting part, is it possible to retain more fresh water? Especially in the Netherlands, we have a lot of rainfall and quite some average evaporation, which means you have a lot of fresh water left, which you can use instead of discharging it just as quickly as possible towards the sea. So I think in my presentation onwards, I will tell a little bit more about that. And the third pillar is about the future as well. Can we look at different sources than just groundwater? Because groundwater, if you over-extract groundwater, you can have really negative impact. I'm going to talk a little more about the retaining fresh water. And we have identified a location in the Netherlands where we have, where there's a high demand for drinking water and where we have kind of a big negative impact because of over-extraction of groundwater. And this is a study area which is called Sallandse Heuvelrug. And this is where we developed a new concept, a concept called Panorama Waterland, or the eternal source, which is completely based on infiltrating fresh water in the ground and use your natural storage as a basin for the dry period. It's an interesting study area because it's an old moraine, which means it's a landform created or shaped by a glacier. So it has very interesting characteristics and also very interesting soil conditions where it's easy to infiltrate large amount of water. I realize this is quite a big slide. I just try to highlight some parts. You don't need to memorize it all. But I just want to explain the concept. Over here you see a schematic of the Sallandse Heuvelrug, or or of the concept. And here you see how the system works. So on the high part, you really want to make sure you infiltrate all the rainfall which falls down in order to keep up your groundwater level. And then you can store the fresh water in the ground instead of discharging everything. Even though, of course, some of the fresh water will eventually come back into your canal, and you can collect it there. And even, you might think of pumping it backwards into the high parts and try to infiltrate that water as well. So under the slide you see a simple calculation actually, where you have, I think in the Netherlands you have on average 800 millimeters of rainfall, and you have 500 millimeters of evaporation, which means you have 300 millimeters of rainfall left. And we are very good at discharging all that fresh water, but that is logical because we don't want floods, etc. And we want to have dry feeds. But if you would come up with this different kind of concept where you could use that fresh water and store it in the ground, you would have a real nice storage for the dry season when the water demand is at its highest, and you are able to actually mitigate your negative impact. So that's what we want to do. So we're really trying to collect all the fresh water in the canals and pump it backwards onto the high parts. And with large-scale infiltration, you can infiltrate that fresh water in the ground. But you can imagine, I'm now actually talking about the concept. It's now pure theoretical. But if you want to apply this in practice, you can imagine you really want to reshape your groundwater and your surface water system. That means something. That will impact a lot of stakeholders. And I think that's something really important to realize, that you have to look on where do people live? Where are the farmers? Where are the natural reserves? And you have to take that into account. And what will a higher groundwater level mean for all these different stakeholders? So you really need to think about that as well. Then I go to my next slide, because I can imagine it. How does such an infiltration facility looks like, right? So this is an example of how it could look like. This is not in the same study area. It's at a different spot in the Netherlands. But here you see 3 infiltration ponds which are connected and fed by a creek, and the water is retained there and just slowly infiltrates into the ground. Then almost my final slide, but I think this is the main message of today. Like, you cannot do it alone. You need to forge alliances, because if you want to reshape your groundwater and surface water system, you have an impact on a lot of stakeholders, and you really need to work together. And you need to build on your relationships. For example, in the study area, you have inhabitants, you have governmental organizations like municipalities and provinces, etc., etc. Then I come to my final slide for today. Just a key takeaway messages. I just start off with my most important message. You cannot do it alone. You need to have partners. You need to have governmental partners. You need to have non-governmental partners. And you need to think about incorporating resilience into your long-term vision. And I believe that resilience is just more than just climate resilience. So you need to think of that. And then the final one is also important. I think it's best to think in options and not in blueprints. So really think of infrastructure options and not blueprints. I want to thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Ivar. And then we go to the next speaker, who would be an online speaker. And this is a little bit exciting because I'm not sure whether this will work, but her name is Saituni Rahema, and she works with our team of VAI in Nakuru, but at the same time she works also with the Nakuru Water Company. And Nakuru Water is a company in Kenya which is very much challenged by low water resources, while at the same time their population is growing very rapidly. So let's see whether we can have Saituni on screen. And now I have to look at the technical department. There she is. Hi, Saituni. A very good afternoon to you.
Hello.
How are you?
Yes, at least I hope it works until the end.
Good to see it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to have this presentation about on climate. I'm Zaituni Kanenje. I work for Nakuru Water and Sanitation Company, which is one of the WOPs in Kenya. And I'd like to just introduce briefly about Nakuru. Where is Nakuru? Nakuru County is one of the 47 counties in Kenya.
Saituni, just to interrupt,
sorry?
your presentation is not yet on screen, so maybe it's good to ask. Yeah.
Okay.
There it is, yes. Please.
Yes, thank you. First, I just want to say briefly about Nakuru Water, which is not part of my PPT. So Nakuru County is one of the 47 counties in Kenya. It is located in the Great Rift Valley and covers an area of about 7,510 square kilometers. The county has a population of about 2 million people, and it is the headquarter. Nakuru town is the headquarter of the headquarter, and it is the largest urban centers in Kenya after Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu. So I want to take you through Nakuru Water and Sanitation Company. In the county, we have 3 water companies, which is Nakuru Water and Sanitation Company, serving the urban population. Then we have Naivasha Sub-County, Naivasha Water, serving Naivasha Sub-County, and we have Nakuru Rural that is serving the rural part of the county. So my discussion is on Nakuru Water and Sanitation Company. The water company has a population of about, serves a population of about 533,800 people. And the population is, of course, increasing, which is posing a lot of threat on water supply, largely because groundwater sources are really dwindling, while it provides 90% of the total water supply. Currently, we are able to produce only 45,000 meter cubic per day of water, which is available against a demand of 70,000 meter cubic, which tells us that the demand is quite high as compared to our production. The demand for water is expected to rise significantly, with the demand for reaching about 191,000 meter cubic per day in 2050 to serve an estimated population of 2 million. While as at now, with the same population, our production within the city is only 45,000 meter cubic per day, which tells us that we still have a long way to go, and we need to work on the issue of climate.
Saituni, if I may interrupt, I think you want to go for the next slide, right? Because I think it's good if you say...
Yes. Yeah, so when we look at that slide, for Nakuru Urban, that is Nakuru Water, under this WOP with support from the Waterworks program and VAI, we are working on a concept which we call sponge city concept, so that we are able to meet the demand of water as explained above. And the major issues that we have is 2 technical issues within the county is lack of green spaces, blocked drainages, flooding, insufficient sanitation facilities, high fluoride level, groundwater, and poor solid waste management. That is why the utilities, together with the partners, have come up with the concept of sponge city, to make sure that we work as much as possible to be able to retain the little resources that we have. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes. And for us, the use of infrastructure, we are looking at three major things in here for us to be able to conserve our water. That is retention, recharge, and reuse of the available resources that we have. So the use of urban infrastructure, that is the roads, pavement, roof, fields, etc., as a catchment area for harvesting rainwater, that is retention. Then we are working on redirecting the runoff to infiltrate the aquifer, that is recharge, and for continued use in towns or cities. Because as mentioned, our population is really growing, and our demand is quite high, while we only have 45,000 cubic meters per day. So we are working on applying the 3 Rs, that is retention, recharge, and reuse. Next slide. Yeah, and as we can see, our challenges is population growth, climate change, land degradation, and dwindling reductions. And our solutions exist in a synergy between the technical issues and people involved, between community, private, and government authorities, and mobilizing local finance resources. The first presenter, the person that just presented before me, mentioned about we can never be able to do this together, to do this alone. So we need all stakeholders to come on board so that we can be able to fight the monster ahead of us. So for Nakuru Water, we are working with private investors, we are working with private institutions, we are working with government authorities, and trying as much as we can to be able to mobilize resource so that we can be able to implement the concept of sponge city within the town. And we are looking at in future being the first sponge city in Kenya and in Africa. Next, please. Next slide. So as we can see, that is just a pictorial of what is happening. The demand is quite high. That is people lining up for the little resource that we have. Yet we can see there is a lot of water that is overflowing due to poor drainages, flooding, and all that. So this concept is working towards being able to conserve, especially the rainwater that is flowing in on the runoffs. Next. Yeah, so for the additional alternative resource for water provisions and regulations, we need to work within the regulations. And for under this program, the Waterworks, with support from VEI, we are working towards supporting the county come up with regulations to conserve the little resources that we have, that is water, and also green infrastructure to improve water recharge and and filtration. We are working on, especially in schools, we have programs that we are supporting, especially the school-going kids, that is in primary, to bring in the culture of environment conservation, that is planting trees in schools so that they can be able to cascade the same in their homes. Then we also have integration of water management and urban planning together with the planning departments. As mentioned, we can never be able to achieve this alone. We are working with all the departments within the county to be able to have the Sponge City program a success. Yeah. Next slide. Next slide, please. So for the that is when we talk about Sponge City, that is what we mean. For Sponge City, we are looking at harvesting water from the roof runoff for urban farming. We are also looking at collecting water from the rooftops. The utility is working on mapping all the roofs within all the roofs, say, within the public institutions, so that we can work on rainwater, roof water harvesting, then regreening areas for increased infiltration and purification, then also working on bridge across seasonal stream to check and store seasonal floods, reuse grey water in urban vegetable gardens, because we all understand that as much as this is the urban areas, we also have we are working on promoting regreening, whereby people can be able to have vegetables and all that within their small homesteads. Then also porous paving for increased infiltrations. I also mentioned about trees to provide shades and reduce runoff. And for trees, our focus mainly is on schools and public places, say in towns, game parks, and all that. Then also use of storm water for groundwater recharge and green rooftops. Next, please. Yes, with that illustration, you can be able to see we have due to poor drainages, we have big quarries that are causing danger to the public. So the program is working on how we can be able to reinstate the quarries, how these quarries can be able to store can be worked out to be able to store water, which can at the end be able to be used within the homesteads. You can also see how the kind of houses that, especially in the informal settlement, are. We are working on ensuring that all the rooftops are able to harvest, all the homesteads are able to harvest the water, as much as, of course, in the urban, most of them are rentals. So this will also be able to ease the burden of especially the tenants who, in most cases, say in the informal settlement, are able to harvest the water. Then on the right, you can be able to see the green vegetables, whereby under this program we are promoting having people have to grow vegetables, small vegetables, and all that, just to make sure that whatever water that is available is able to be harvested and reused. Next, please. Yeah, so these are some of the programs that we are working on under the project. As you can see, instead of having water wastage, we are able to have infiltration, whereby at and this is actually at household levels. So we are trying to promote this at all in schools and at household levels. So we engage women and all that at household level to be able to come up with income generating activities, whereby the water that is used water can be harvested, used, and still be able to be reused. For the tank or in the middle, that is a school program, whereby we are promoting all schools to be able to harvest water from the roof. So we support the schools with water tanks and water gutters. And for this is just for a start. What we are working on together with the county is making sure that this is sustainable. This is something that they'll be able to take it up moving forward. Yes. Next, please.
So Tunu, we have to ask you to start wrapping up, considering the time
Yes.
that
So
we have
that
available.
is it. Yeah, thank you. I think I'm finalizing. So with that, we can be able to see like the check dam installed in a gully, resulting from the culvert restored to original level within 1 year. So we are trying to see how best we can be able to restore like the gullies and all that, and excess water is diverted to a pond for vegetable farming, to ensure that whatever little that is there is conserved. Yes. Next, please. I should be wrapping up now. So those are some of the income generating activities. We engage women within communities to be able to do tree planting, growing vegetables, and all that. Yeah. Next, please. Yeah, so as mentioned above, these approaches, these are things that we do together as a team, together from the community, the utility, the county, and also trying to see how possible the national government will be able to come up with regulations to guide all these. So that is citizen platform, whereby we engage the public, frequent engagement, so that in future everyone gets to learn that this is our responsibilities at all. Full inclusive and participation, because usually whenever there's no participation, there's no sustainability. So then involvement of the local people, which is very key for ownership and sustainability, say whether it is tree planting, vegetable growing, and all that, each partners are involved. Yeah, next, please. Yes, Adrian, I think I should be wrapping up. That is it, what we are doing as a utility in Nakuru, and we are looking at moving forward, how these can be upscaled to the county and also other utilities in the country. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Zaitouni. It's unfortunate that you cannot be present because we also wanted you on the panel. But it's great that technology can bring you here on a virtual level. And we thank you a lot here from Bonn. I would like to go to the next part, and I would like to invite Mr. Suresh Kumarohia to convene that and also to announce the next speakers. And Mr. Kumarohia is the program lead at the International Water Association. And before you joined IWA, you served as senior director at Center for Science and Environment, which is a global think tank. And you were also the academic director of School and Water for Water and Waste for 12 years.
Do you have the link? I do, yes.
Thank you, Adrian, for introducing the session and the first two sessions. Speakers, and now I would like to call upon the next speaker, Mr. Norbert Jardin, who is a civil engineer. Yeah, please. He holds a PhD from Darmstadt University of Technology. He is currently the Chief Executive Officer in Roverbend, if I pronounce it correctly. And prior to this, he headed the planning department for about 20 years. So looking forward to your presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. Welcome. And it's a really pleasure to present here, to give you the example of our road to climate neutrality, which we are now ongoing since, I would say, 15 years. It's all about the Ruhrverband. It's a river basin-oriented utility, a public utility. We are responsible for the catchment area of the Ruhr, for all the water management activities in that catchment. And that means we are operating reservoirs to serve nearly 5 million people with drinking water. We are responsible for the wastewater business in that catchment, operating 65 wastewater treatment plants, and in total 800 technical facilities in our area, all to try to solve all the water management problem in that area. And as I said, we are on our way to climate neutrality, and we started nearly 15 years ago. And at that time, climate change was very present in some parts of the world, but in a rain-rich area in the western part of Germany, we thought that would take some decades until climate change will arrive us and will set us in front of water management problems. But it came very, very faster than we thought it would be. And what you can see on this slide is what you can see on every place on the Earth. It becomes warmer and warmer. also in our area. The last 20 years showed the 10 warmest years in our history, and we are observing the temperature now for nearly 140 years. The last year was the warmest in our history, and the last 14 years were all of them precipitation deficit years. So we have a long period of drought in our area nowadays, and also 2021, some of you may have heard about that, we had the worst floods since 1946. So climate change and all the consequences with regard to weather extremes also arrived in our area. And the question for us was how to deal with these consequences, how to transform the utilities in order to cope better with the consequences of climate change. And our strategy is based mainly on two pillars, as most of you who are dealing with climate change consequences are doing. One is climate change adaptation, and I will talk not very much about that. And the other one is climate change mitigation. So what is our part? What is our contribution to overcome the consequences of climate change? How can we improve our services in order to save CO2 emissions, to reduce also other gaseous emissions from the operation of our plants? And I will talk a little bit more about that. And before I do that, I show you our road to climate neutrality. We set up a strategic goal that by the year 2030, we would like to become climate neutral with all our operations. And you see, the next goal we would try to achieve is energy neutrality for the whole utility, which means that we are aiming to produce so much energy, renewable energy, we need in the whole utility. And we set up a goal to achieve that by 2024, but we are almost there. And I will show you that on the next slide. Here you can see the electrical balance of our utility. Since we started to improve the energy efficiency of our plants, to increase the amount of renewable energy on our plants. And what you can clearly see here, that the red part of these bars, so the amount of energy we buy from the external market has been reduced substantially. And almost in this year, we are nearly energy neutral, which means that we produce on the yearly basis enough energy to serve all our facilities, which means not that we produce that on every day of the year. That will be the next step. But on a yearly balance, we are almost there. And you can see that the self-generated renewable energy has increased substantially. And why this is the case, that we are not only producing electricity from biogas, but then most of the wastewater treatment plant operators do that. We are operating nearly 50 combined heat and power plants on our wastewater treatment plants, but we also have installed large solar power plants on our wastewater treatment plants, and also operating 6 hydropower plants in the River Ruhr and its tributaries to produce electrical energy. And we are taking also food waste to produce even more biogas. And with this renewable energy, we can serve all of our technical facilities. This is one approach to become energy neutral. The other one is to further improve the energy efficiency of every single plant. And we did that also since a couple of years, very systematically, starting with the larger plants, and try to figure out how to optimize the plants in order to become more energy efficient. And this is one example which I show here. This is our second largest plant, the wastewater treatment plant in Bochum. And what you can clearly see, that this plant is nowadays energy positive. So we are producing on this wastewater treatment plant more energy than we need to operate the plant. And another very positive side effect of this optimization is that the quality of the treated wastewater has been improved, especially with regard to nitrogen. Why is this so important? Nitrogen elimination on the wastewater treatment plants is one source of gaseous emissions which pays to the greenhouse gas balance of every wastewater treatment plant utility. And the more efficient the nitrogen elimination can be established on the treatment plant, the lower the N2O emissions are. So as you can see here, we were able also to improve the nitrogen elimination on the treatment plant. And if we look on our greenhouse gas emission balance, you see there is a long way to go. Since 2012, we have seen a systematic reduction in the scope 2 emissions. This is mainly due to the increase of renewable energy to be more energy efficient. But there is still in the scope 3 a substantial amount of emissions. And this is mainly due to our sludge incineration process we have in place. We are burning all of our sludge using brown coal to burn that sludge, and we are now building a new solar drying facility in order to get rid of using the brown coal, and then this part of the emission will reduce by 2/3. So these are this is our ambition, and these are some of the steps we have in mind to move forward in the different scopes, reducing the amount of direct emissions. As I said, N2O, but also methane is a substantial amount of the greenhouse gas balance, and to even increase the amount of renewable energy and to dry the sewage sludge with a solar drying facility. But at the end, and this is also part of the truth, at the very end, it will not be possible to operate a wastewater treatment plant without having greenhouse gas emissions. So the question will arise how to compensate. And we as a utility have the advantage that we are also having more than 3,000 hectares of forest, which we can use for CO2 fixation and also try to further increase the amount of renewable energy production. With that, I hope that was an interesting example for some of you, seeing how we as a utility are moving forward to becoming climate neutral in 2030. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Norbert. Thank you for sticking to the time. IWA's Climate Smart Utilities program would like to invite the second speaker for this second part of the panel, Lisa Ehrenfried. She'll be joining remotely. And as Lisa, are you available online? Let's see. Dr. Lisa, next speaker joining online.
There's no online guest in the meeting.
Okay, so we can move on to the next speaker, Tom Sanderling, if you're ready. Please, and in the meantime, we can try if Lisa can join. Tom, if you can come, if you're ready to take. Yeah. Tom, if you can stick to 7 to 8 minutes, would be okay?
Yeah. Thank you for your introduction. We are Dunea, and we are climate neutral before the year 2025. And we would like to share our climate journey with you. My name is Tom Gorijs Oude-Sanderink, and I'm here today with two colleagues of mine, Eva Aerts and Mark Janssen Lok. And I would like to tell you more about our climate adaptation and climate mitigation strategies, and we hope to inspire you. First, something about Dunea. We are based in the western part of the Netherlands, and we are along the coastline, and we use two rivers as a source, namely the Rhine, which also runs here, and the Meuse, and we pump it to our dune system. And Adrian has already mentioned this morning that we use the dunes as a reservoir. We infiltrate this water into an aquifer, and this is our first filtration step. And after this, we put it through some more filtration steps to pump it through our 1.3 million customers in our service area, which also includes the city of The Hague. Our goal is to produce good and reliable drinking water in harmony with nature, and that is what Dunea is committed to every day. This also means every day to come in the future. And to do that, we need a good resilient strategy, because Dunea is also facing a couple of threats. Our main threats are a growing population on one hand. We see a growth of 20% to the year 2050. And on the other hand, we have climate change, which we all know. We have talked about this all morning. And this will mean that we have less reliable resources. Especially the combination of these two will mean that there will be a higher level of scarcity of drinking water. And if we do not act, so we need an adaptation and mitigation strategies. And we hear the discussion whether to adapt or to mitigate, and we try to do both. And I will give you some examples of things that we do. First of all, the aquifer that I talked about just now. We have a reservoir for 3 months of fresh drinking water within our dune system, and we are trying to expand this system right now to have a bigger aquifer. Furthermore, we are using 2 rivers, which means that we already have a more resilient planning to when one of the rivers has a low discharge or is polluted, that we can switch to another river. I'm myself involved in finding the optimized mix between these 2 rivers to find the lowest carbon emissions in total, because we have to transport all this water towards our dunes. Let's see. Furthermore, we are looking for a third source right now, more local to our filtering systems, to be even more resilient in the future. And because we are in a coastal area, this means that we have that our aquifer is more threatened by saltiness levels of the seawater. Therefore, we are looking right now. We started a pilot project to make drinking water out of brackish water by using reverse osmosis. Then we also do something in the demand side management. As you can see here in this graph, most of our drinking water is used to shower, flush the toilet, and wash our clothes. We stimulate to make changes in legislation, behavior, and promote the development and use of smart technologies to reduce the total drinking water consumption. On the right-hand side, you can see our rooftops that are all filled with solar panels right now. We are expanding these roofs with more solar panels, and we are putting a external solar PV field as well. All the energy that we do not produce ourselves comes from the Dutch wind from sea, 100% Dutch wind. Working together in partnerships is very important to us. And we are working together, for example, with IWA, Waterworks, Blauwe Netten, which is a Dutch cooperation. And what we do here is, for example, carbon pricing. This means that we put a price tag on the carbon emissions. This way, financial business cases are better weighted on their climate impact. Also, we are developing a raw materials passport to new assets can be planned with low carbon emissions. This means that we know what goes in the ground, where and when. So when we take it out again 40 years later to replace it, that we know how to recycle this. We are exploring eco-friendly alternatives for chemicals used during the purification processes, and we are implementing the CSRD EU rule and value creation, which means that we add an outside-in perspective to our strategies. This is our climate journey in a nutshell, and we would love to hear what you think about our climate journey and how you are doing the things, which strategies you are implementing. And maybe we have some common ground of very different views. We would like to continue this conversation. After the panel discussion, we can be found over here, and we are always looking for a partner to co-create and lead together. Thank you.
Thank you. Adrian, I'd like to hand it over to you.
Yes, thanks, Tom. Very nice presentation. As a final speaker, I think we have not yet managed to connect with Lisa, but let's go to the final speaker, who is Ms. Yolanda Gomez from the Waterlinks Network in the Philippines. Ms. Gomez, you're a development planner with more than 20 years of experience working with government agencies involved in the development and management of natural resource and the environment. You're also an experienced partnership facilitator with a history of more than 15 years of working in the wash sector with the non-profit organization dealing with water and wastewater utilities. And you will present your work with Waterlinks as a WOP facilitator since 2012. And shall I give you the mic? Oh, actually possible.
He's trying to make me visible. And thank you very much. Okay, so thank you for allowing Waterlinks to share with you this afternoon our work in terms of improving climate resiliency of water utilities through WOPs. We are not a utility. We are an NGO based in the Philippines, and we have been doing this WOP work since 2011, but we were first established in 2008 as a platform for cooperation on WOPs in Asia, together with Asian Development Bank, USAID, and the International Water Association. And our core business is the design and implementation of WOPs across Asia and the Pacific to improve operational efficiency. And we are the Asia Regional Platform for GWOPA. So few information about the Philippines. We have been ranked number 4, most vulnerable by the Global Risk Index 2021. The projections in terms of forthcoming climate changes includes the temperature is likely to rise by 1.2 to 2 degrees Celsius by 2030, so it's just a few years from now, and making water management complex and challenging for water utilities. We are visited by typhoon, at least 20 per year, which hit various areas of the Philippines and causing really mass flooding. And in terms of the impact of a changing climate regime, we have an average of $800 million US dollars lost annually due to climate change impacts, which is about 1.2 of the annual average GDP of the country. So we have this Be Secure project with USAID, wherein Waterlinks was tasked to facilitate and design and deliver multi-mentee WOP to improve climate resilience of 6 utilities in the Philippines. So these are public utilities. We call them water districts. So these are water districts in Cagayan de Oro in Mindanao, Isabela City also in Mindanao, Leyte Metro in the Visayas, Metro Iloilo in the Visayas, Metro Cotabato in Mindanao, and Zamboanga in Mindanao. So what is happening to these mentees? So 3 of the 6 mentees affected by severe typhoon. I'm sure you have heard about Yolanda, not Yolanda Gomez, but the typhoon, which hit the Philippines in 2013, and so far the strongest that hit our country. And that year, the impact of Haiyan is really about 5% of the GDP has been impacted of this one. Yeah. So we also have Typhoon Washi, or we call it Sendong, and we also have franc in 2008. So most of these 6 utilities are really impacted by typhoons. As I have said, we get about 20 of them every year. And also, this means typhoon and like storm surges that affects the assets, no? And thereby impacting on the delivery of service to the consumers. Okay, so for the mentoring part, we have a mentor coming from Florida Water and Climate Alliance. This is a science-based alliance organization. And in the WOP, they were represented by Palm Beach County Water Utility Department of Florida. And the Palm Beach County Water Utility is the 3rd largest utility in Florida, providing water and wastewater services to about 600,000 residents. And the main reason that they have become our mentor because we have shared experience and impacts of extreme weather. In their case, Hurricane Katrina, and has undergone the process of integrating risk reduction and climate change adaptation in their operations successfully. So the objectives of the partnership and the duration. So basically, the partnership was really designed to help mentees develop vulnerability assessment and climate resilient business plans. 2 major outputs which we think are really helpful in making utilities climate resilient, and also to establish and strengthen the capacity of the Philippine Association of Water Districts. So this is the Association of Water Districts in the Philippines, all publicly owned, about 500 of them, through their community of practice for climate change. So the partnership ran for 15 months, sometimes in 2015 and up to 2016. So what are the WOP activities that were basically implemented? So we have 3 mentor visits. We have the diagnostic. They come for the first time, then they come again for a second time after a few months, and then they come for the final visit to take a look at these 2 outputs of the utility and really check if, it will work or it would be just documents. So they also have, the mentors came to the Philippines to visit the different, prioritize the larger cities. They really didn't went to the 6 utilities, but they only prioritized 3, and these are the major and the bigger cities. And there was a mentee visit to Florida to bring the mentee and really observe how things are being done in Florida. And of course, the visits are training sessions with all the mentees. There was a regular email exchange and review of submissions, but more importantly, the assignments for all mentees. Every month, mentee has an assignment from the mentor to really help them develop the vulnerability assessment reports, at the same time, the business plans. So this is how the process. I will not explain this, but if you are interested, you can visit our website, and we have a toolkit that really helps in this vulnerability assessment, especially for island countries. Yeah? So the outputs, there were 2 major outputs, as I have said, the Vulnerability Assessments Report, or the VAR. So each of the mentee developed this report, which identifies climate-related risks and hazards regularly faced by the mentees. So meaning climate-related hazards related to the typhoon, because basically the major enemy of the utility are really the typhoon, because it causes flooding and impacts on the assets of the utility. And it identifies present and future climate and non-climate risks, and its impact from an engineering and service delivery perspective, how it will impact on the service being provided by the mentee. And at the same time, it identifies thresholds and vulnerability in the operation systems, and this provides a solid basis for mentee to put in place adaptation measures and emergency response plans to address climate change. Now, the other important and major output is the climate resilient business plan. So what is this all about? This is a 5-year business plan that water districts are required to submit. Yeah? So in this plan, they consider the result of the vulnerability assessment, so it becomes an input to the plan, particularly the identified adaptation options, which are made an integral part of the business plan. It identifies and prioritizes risk reduction measures and climate adaptation options for short and long-term actions. And more importantly, it defines activities for the presentation of the engineering and delivery system, disaster preparedness program, and emergency response plan. And this is the first time that the water districts, the 6 water districts, are doing this kind of business plan. Okay. So after 15 months and with the completion of the major outputs, our main conclusion, not only for Waterlinks, but also with the mentor and the mentee, is that the WOP is an effective tool for building climate resilience and achieve water security. The vulnerability assessment reports and climate resilient business plans are the first to be prepared by the water and sanitation utilities in the country. The business plans have helped the water districts secure the required financing to carry out the climate adaptation projects as identified, and with mentees at the core of the COP, they become eventually the member of the COP. The COP has been active and continues to help other water districts understand the impact of climate change in their operations. And currently, the COP has assisted about 60 water districts in preparation of their emergency response plans to cope with typhoon and flooding in their areas, and at the same time have trained about 300 personnel from the 100 water districts. So that was our experience. If there's any questions, you can ask Adrian.
So thank you very much. It was a nice presentation also. We have a few minutes left because one of the speakers could not be there. It was also in the middle of the night in Australia, so you can imagine she kind of overslept. But it gives us a bit of time to have a bit of a longer discussion. So I would like to invite all the speakers, including Tom, to sit here at the panel. And in addition, we have 2 additional guests with us. It's Professor Dr. Kala Vaira Famorthi. He is the director of the International Water Association. And we have Mr. Edmundo Perez from Manilat, Philippines. And we are very pleased that both of you are here today. I think it's nice to ask a few questions and then also ask the audience to join. There is some microphones. So you could join the discussion with your own mic. But let me first ask Professor Vaira Famorthi, or Kala. You are heading the International Water Association with many associate utilities. I think what we've seen in these presentations is that we all recognize this challenge, upcoming challenge related to climate change. We see droughts, we see too much water, we see typhoons, disasters, and each utility is kind of taking its own climate journey, as Tom used this word. What is IWA doing in this field, and how could we also accelerate actually this journeys?
Thanks very much, Adrian. So at IWA, we have a climate smart utilities program. And in that program, what we try to do is to bring utilities together into a sort of a community of practice to share the lessons that they've learned, both good and bad practices, so that other utilities can learn from those practices. The initiative considers both mitigation and adaptation. And what we find is that in both areas, we see we're in a space where, the slogans are really ahead of, if you like, our ability to respond to those slogans, So when we look at mitigation, particularly in the area of wastewater, because drinking water, as Norbert was saying, is mainly dealing with Scope 2 emissions. But with wastewater, there are a lot of leaking emissions, the fugitive emissions. And our ability to monitor and establish what those emissions are is very poor. And the IPCC estimates that we use for emission factors are highly inaccurate. So we feel that as a sector, we're underestimating our fugitive emissions. And, you know, I think as Norbert was saying, nitrous oxide is about 300 times more potent than carbon dioxide, and methane is 25 times more potent. And it's those emissions that we are very poor at sort of understanding. And so members of the IWA are doing research where they're really trying to monitor treatment works and trying to establish more accurate emission factors, but it's still a long way away. The other area that we see some interesting things happening in IWA is in the area of potentially the electrification of wastewater treatment processes. As we move into more renewable energies to supply the processes, right? So our scope 2 emissions are almost going to zero. There's an opportunity potentially to use more electricity for some of our processes so that we can reduce some of our fugitive emissions. What we see is that some of the process technologies we use, for example, to reduce inorganic nitrogen, you know, in ammonia-rich wastewaters, we're finding that they potentially might actually, even though they might use less energy, there's a risk that they might generate more nitrous oxide. So it's a bit counterintuitive that you're using less electricity, but you're actually generating more greenhouse gas emissions. And I think it's important for the audience to know that energy reduction is not the same as greenhouse gas emissions. You know, they're very different. In the area of adaptation, if I could, we're also trying to understand the uncertainties that exist with some of the global change pressures we have, and how do utilities respond to those uncertainties. You know, we have uncertainties, of course, with climate change. There's a cascading, you know, from global circulation models to our regional circulation models, and then to our atmospheric variables, and then our hydrologic models, and then finally our water resource models. There's huge uncertainties when we get to that point. And then if you sort of wrap in population dynamics and our lack of understanding of urbanization, and it's not about urban populations just growing, but those populations are also growing up. The rate at which they're utilizing resources is increasing. We don't know too much about this supply-demand deficit. So we're trying to investigate how can we respond to uncertainties? How can we create systems that are more adaptable so that they can sort of incrementally grow over time so that they can respond to this uncertainty future? So the IWA Climate Smart Utilities program is sort of trying to navigate that space. We have, you know, fantastic experts like Norbert within the IWA, both academic and practitioners, and so we're mining those brains to really try and put a bit more skin onto the, put more flesh onto the bones of some of these concepts that I think are still a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah, thank you. I have another question, but I'll get back to you if you allow me. But maybe first to our second new guest at the table, Mr. Amuno Perez. You work with Manilat, and I know Manilat is a very big utility. You're serving Manila. Similar situation maybe as Mrs. Gomez sketched, where you're confronted with disasters. But what are you doing as a utility to work on mitigation and adaptation?
Thanks, Adrian. Maynilad is the largest water concession in the Philippines. In terms of customer base, we have around 10 million customers. We serve them through the 1.5 million water service connections. So now let me provide you a brief overview of the programs we have to address the challenges from our source, raw water quality, distribution, and the opportunities we have to educate the public. To address our water source, we have this Plant for Life program. We have been doing this for 15 years, and we have already planted our 1 millionth tree sapling this year. And I'm also delighted to tell everyone that for the past 3 years, the survival rate of these saplings has been at 90%. Another program we have is the potable water reuse. There was a need for us to expand our water source because of the growing demand in our concession area. So we opted to further treat the wastewater effluents. Because of this new program, we are now serving 38,000 consumers in our south area, and because of the success, we have plans to further use this strategy in different areas of the concession area. Moving forward to the raw water quality, for the past years, we have been troubled with increased turbidity levels in our raw water, forcing us to reduce our water production, and consequently affecting our customers, majority of our customers. Given these instances, it has been decided to have this major renovation for our two biggest treatment facilities, La Mesa Treatment Plant 1 and La Mesa Treatment Plant 2. With these renovations, it is our goal to have a longer retention time for the raw water and to retrofit the structures to enhance their earthquake resiliency and also to automate processes to further increase operations. We've also started to use renewable energy. We have 2 solar farms, with each farm capable of generating 1 megawatt of electricity each day. Now for the distribution, we have our central control monitoring room. This is where our operators can remotely monitor the situation of our distribution system. So we have, they can monitor operational parameters such as pressures, flow, and they can also analyze pressure variances both in our water and wastewater facilities. Also, we have also recovered around 880 million liters of water since we were reprivatized last 2007. And also, we have these programs to educate the public. We have this Dalay Dunong program wherein we teach students and teachers on water conservation, health benefits of water, and the ill effects of the water system. And lastly, we have the Maynilad Water Academy program. The Maynilad Water Academy is the first academy in the Philippines dedicated to the advancement of water and wastewater capacity development locally and abroad. WOPs, the Water Operators Partnership, is one key function of the Water Academy. We also do benchmarking. So that's it. It's a program for Maynilad.
Thank you. It's quite extensive and impressive. May I still ask whether you have any consequences of typhoons or the large disaster events that were mentioned?
Actually, we had. I think it was 2021 when we had this very high turbidity levels. Before that, we had another in 2012, wherein our plants can normally treat 300 NTUs. Our source normally has 10 to 15 NTUs. But come 2011 or 2012, the turbidity levels reached up to 1,800 NTUs. So imagine the gap. So we really had to close our treatment plants to avoid further exacerbating to avoid the disruption of breaking the plant.
Okay, thank you. Maybe if I may go back to you, Carla. We see on the one side that IWA is doing a lot for its members. At the same time, we see WOPs coming up. I was wondering, especially with regard to this topic, how do you see that relation between the association and water operator partnerships? Because I believe we've never so much engaged in the same fora so far.
No, I think the IWA can learn a lot from WOPs, and my personal desire or ambition is that we can capture some of the real great work that you all have been doing at JWOPA and through these WOPs, and that we can share that with our members and maybe encourage the WOPs community to engage with some of the utilities that we have in IWA who may be not aware of this sort of peer-to-peer learning that takes place within the WOPs process, and somehow draw them into the work that you're doing. I mean, we're an association, and our mission is really to improve the capacity, improve the performance of our members, be it utilities or academics. And I think that you guys have got a really, really good model that would really benefit our members. So I'm hoping, and we do work quite closely with JWOPA, so I'm hoping that we can take some of your lessons, share it with our members, and then encourage them to participate in some of the work that you're doing. I think, you guys are doing a great job.
Yes, well, thanks. Good to hear that. But it's also something I think, I think there is much more needed. If you look on the enormous challenges that are there worldwide, there's this. How can we stimulate knowledge transfer and accelerate it? Actually, yes. So maybe a question to you, Norbert. Is Roerverband involved with these kind of activities? And maybe another question: why did you actually participate in the Climate Smart Utilities contest?
Because we believe that it is one of the core challenges we are facing today, how to cope with the consequences of climate change. And for a water utility, the road to adapt to climate change is much more of consequences for the customers to serve, as we have heard today, with drinking water, but also to serve on the wastewater side. So it's in our core goals and our strategy to adapt to the consequences of climate change. And what we have seen in the last decades is that we are facing much often floods, droughts, and we have heard that from the Philippines, even typhoons or hurricanes in the western part of the globe. So that is something a utility has to cope with, to adapt to. The other part of the medal is how to be part also of the mitigation of the climate change. And although the water business is not the strongest emitter of greenhouse gas worldwide, but we are also a role model for what we can do in contribute to the mitigation of climate change. And we believe to be such a role model, we can send out what our journey is, what our goals are, and try to offer our lessons learned from our journey to others to follow this path, and also learn from others, like in these discussions in the Climate Smart Utilities Initiative from IWA, to learn from other utilities how we can improve as a German utility further on.
Thank you. Yeah, clear. So that is, I think, also vice versa on all sides, that we want to learn from each other. Maybe one question then that brings me to my Dutch colleagues, because it was interesting that you had quite different. You had of course different presentations. There were different ideas, but how does that work in the Netherlands when we work on, say, climate journeys? Is that an isolated activity, or is that is there some sector-wide exchange on that?
Well, you have the partnership of Blauwe Netten, which I mentioned, and within this partnership we are looking at climate mitigation and adaptation strategies. For example, which I mentioned in my presentation, is the carbon pricing. This should make companies make more climate resilient choices. Because when you have, for example, two choices to make, you have to buy a new pump, and one of the pumps is more efficient but it's more expensive. Then you take the carbon emission to the lifetime into calculation. You give a price tag of 100 euros, for example, which we take, and then over the lifetime it could be that even financially that the more efficient but more expensive pump comes out as the better choice.
And how do you is that an internal process in your organization, or is that something you take to the Blauwe Netten, to the
Yeah, also municipalities are taking this into consideration. Even higher prices have been seen, like 900 euros per ton of CO2. So I think it's getting more ground in the European Union.
Okay, thanks. Would you like to comment to that also? Or?
Maybe just that I think we can improve the collaboration between the different water utilities, because I think we are, and I'm just speaking for my own utility, but I think we are pretty focused on ourselves, and I think it's better if you share your knowledge with that. So, especially because I think the problems we are facing are quite similar. So then it would really help if you would find a solution together.
I also have this impression that we're still at the very early stages of the climate journey, actually, so that there's still a lot to learn. I'm looking at the time. Is there other people from the audience that would like to put a question to some of the speakers? There's a question there.
Good afternoon. My question goes to the CEO of Riverband. I hope I have pronounced it correctly. Many would like to follow your journey, particularly the water utilities, your journey of reducing climate emissions. You have installed quite a lot of infrastructure, solar, hydro energy, and most of that comes at a very high cost. How are you financing some of this infrastructure?
Yeah, this is something which will pay back only on a long time. So if we are talking, for example, of solar power plants, there is no fast return of investment. This would be a statement I would made 2 years ago. Since the Russian war against the Ukraine, the energy situation, at least in Europe, has changed completely. We have experienced energy prices in the last year of more than 800 euro per megawatt hours. So nobody thought years ago that this will happen in Europe, but it has happened. So the payback time now, which we calculated before that energy crisis, which were in more or less counted in decades, now have been reduced to years. So investments pay back on a long term, but still it takes some years if the return of investment is there. And it needs also the brave to move forward in producing more renewable energy. And if you declare yourself to become climate neutral at the very end, and you are operating wastewater treatment plants, you will not be able to avoid, as Carla said, the greenhouse gas emissions from the wastewater treatment process. So the question is how to compensate this negative greenhouse gas emissions. And one answer would be to increase the amount of the production of renewable energy. And as a wastewater treatment plant operator, you have several options to do that. You can use biogas, you can use the space, you can even use wind power plants on your treatment plants in order to increase the amount of renewable energy. So this pays back in the long term, but it's nothing somebody will expect within 1 or 2 years to have a substantial amount of return of investments. So more on the long term, but then it will pay back.
Please.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for the presentations. My question, it's not really a question, but it's like an observation from the presentation that was online. She talked about reuse, water reuse. So there was something to do with rainwater harvesting, so that that can also be another source of water. coming from Uganda, we have two big rainy seasons in a year. So that would, in essence, be a very good source of water, especially for areas where we do not have the pipe water system set up yet. But I don't know, as a utility, how would you advise us to incorporate it within the functions of the national water and still make it commercially viable? Something like that. I hope you get my question.
I think we do. Yeah. And maybe I forgot to ask your name, but
Sorry, I'm Pauline. I'm only from National Water and Sewage Corporation, Uganda.
right. Thank you for the question. I think this is a question maybe here for the right side, my right side, your left side, on where I think there's a lot of experience with Dunea on aquifer recharge and also with Vitens on managing water abstraction areas. Is that a business case?
Well, the utilities in the Netherlands are non-profit, so everything that we invest, we have to get out of the water price. So therefore, there's always a base to improve your system. And every drop that we do not have to produce, there will be no pollution for.
I do understand your question. We as Vitens are really trying to retain this fresh water and try to infiltrate this on large scale. But that's a tricky one because you need you need certain soil conditions, and I think you can also do rainwater harvesting as a community on small scale, but it's not what we are looking at. So so I find it very difficult to answer your question. Yeah.
What I know from the Netherlands situation is that most of these utilities, they own these lands from long, so it's difficult to make that business case, I think. But I think what is a big advantage that we see now is that there are these protected abstraction areas, and I think the same is actually in Roeverband with the forest that you own. That by owning, say, land where there are aquifers, there is much more, potential to create resilience in the system because you can have an active infiltration strategy much easier than if you have to communicate with your the water management authorities in the area, of course. Yeah. How is that in your case in Roeverband?
We always claim that we are one of the first largest water utilities who practice water reuse since 100 years because we do not have any groundwater available in our area. So all the drinking water is produced from surface water. And we are discharging with our wastewater treatment plants in exactly the same river where we extracting the raw water to produce drinking water. And we do that now for 150 years. So we are practicing active water reuse for a long time. And it is, especially in dry years, it is an essential part of the whole water management share we use for providing drinking water for 5 million people. So this is not a very critical water situation we have in our area compared, for example, to parts of Africa, to California, to South Africa and other parts of the world. But still, water reuse will be in the future a part of the overall answer in order to become more resilient in securing the water demands of the population.
Thank you. I hope this at least partially answers the question. I think the business case is difficult. Maybe okay, there's another question. I think I also got a signal that we cannot wait too. The session may not take too long anymore, but I think we can certainly take one final question.
Okay, one quick question.
Yes.
You mentioned incinerating your sludge, and I wondered if you had considered composting and selling it.
Yeah, this is a discussion which we had in Germany for, I'd say 30 years now. And Germany has decided, as a government, has decided that all of the sludge has to be incinerated by 29 for smaller plants and by 32 for all plants. And the reason for that is not to distribute residual contaminants like plastics back to agricultural area, taking into account that Germany is a very densely populated country where we do not have that much space where we can use the sewage sludge directly on land or after composting. And we do not need, as in contrast to other parts in Europe, the organic matter of the sewage sludge in order to fertilize the soil. So this is completely different, for example, compared to Spain, Portugal, or North Africa, where there is also an urgent need to have these organic material back into the soil. This is not the case in most parts of Germany. So the German government has decided that we are incinerating all of our sludge in the near future. And we do that now for nearly 15 years. So since 15 years, we are burning all of our sludge.
Okay, thank you. This brings us to the end of today. I think there is much more to discuss because I feel that we're just at the start of our climate journeys and there's so much to exchange, I think. But I would like to thank our panelists and presenters for your presentations. Thanks a lot. I know you've been preparing and putting time into this. Also, special thank you for you, Professor Weyer from Motti, for being here, and also for you, Edmund, for being here all the way from Manila. We wish you a great evening. I think there is still an evening program, and we look forward to see you tomorrow and continue the discussions.
Sorry, it is not the last session.
Oh, sorry about that. Oh, there's still another one.